Okay, I would like to welcome you all to the panel discussion of challenges of delivering sports directly to consumers. I will be your moderator, Harrington, and joining this panel, we have Bhavesh from beIN Media Group, we have Sébastien from Canal Plus, and we have Thomas from DAZN. I now will allow each of the individuals to give a brief introduction of themselves. Bhavesh, please begin.
Thanks, Kres. I look after all of our digital platforms and content strategy across digital at beIN Media Group, 43 countries, 60 live TV channels, and numerous sports rights across our footprint. Thanks for having me.
Okay, Sébastien.
Hi, Sébastien Audoux. I work for Canal Plus in France. I'm handling all the sports digital content, which means basically everything that's non-linear for the sports at Canal Plus.
And Thomas, please.
Well, hi, it's Thomas. I'm the EVP for DAZN and DACH, so Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. DAZN is a sports streaming service that you will know, and my job is to make sure we hit our plans.
Okay, all right, so this conversation will cover everything from differentiators of OTT versus live TV to the evolution of the market. And I would like to instruct you all, if you have questions for our panelists, please use your chat function, and those questions will be funneled to the panelists, and at their discretion, they will address your questions. So let's begin with the one thing that we are all, pressed with and dealing with right now, and that's COVID-19. Bhavesh, I'd like to start with you. What was your strategy? Do you feel that you were prepared for COVID-19? What was your experience, with the pandemic thus far?
Thanks, Kres. I don't know if anyone could truly prepare for what we all just went through, but I think in digital, we're always experimenting as an industry. We're always trying to further the fan experience. And what we would probably do over the course of years, we compressed into the matter of that 2.5 months of sports hiatus, trying all sorts of things from audio that was unique, fan commentary, watch parties, to anything else that we could do to bring the fans closer to the pitch that were displaced and no longer able to go and watch their favorite clubs and their favorite players. For us, I think the other thing it opened the curtain on was for what we've seen for many, many years, TV piracy, which was, TV is one of the pillars of sport in terms of revenue, but it was no longer the challenged revenue stream alone. You had ticketing revenue and sponsorship revenue, all of it just being attacked at the same time. And it's been a real challenge, I think, for everyone in the industry, but it's just opened, COVID-19 has just accelerated this magnification of what piracy is doing to TV revenues. And you're starting to see the sports rights really start being impacted as they go into the renewals. You're not seeing these huge increases or exponential increases in rights, but you're actually seeing a compression, and you're seeing a flight to real premium content and no longer a really wide breadth of content. And in many cases, things are nice to haves but no longer required to have. And we're seeing that continue. And I think it's something we started saying about a year ago, in fall of 2019, that piracy is really something the industry is going to have to work much closer on and much more together on to address between the federations, the broadcasters like ourselves, and the legal options to accelerate removing those pirates. I think you've seen some really good progress in the market in the UK with the ability to accelerate removal of pirate feeds at the start of this season. And it's something we need to see more and more of across the continent.
Okay, sounds good. Sébastien, would you like to chime in?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, to sum it up, I think that COVID-19 was the ultimate digital transformation accelerator. I think COVID-19 did more for digital transformation at Canal Plus than I did the past 5 years. I mean, because suddenly everything stopped. You had no sports, you were on lockdown, and you had to do something. And I think the digital division in each company were much more ready than the rest of those companies to do stuff remotely, for example. in sports, we have been talking a lot about remote production, but basically what they meant by remote production was basically doing everything from your HQ instead of doing everything on site. But still, when the HQ closed as well during the lockdown in March, well, suddenly your remote production isn't really remote anymore. But in digital, we had all the tools and we were able to invent new programming. I mean, you know, us at Canal Plus, basically we shut down everything on air for all our sports shows, but we were able to bring those shows back on digital by doing the shows remotely entirely with people from home. And we were able to do that during the first week of the lockdown. And basically that triggered a huge amount of digital transformation in the matter of a few weeks, where sometimes you struggle to do the same thing in a few years. So that was a tremendous accelerator.
All right, yeah, okay, so moving on to you, Thomas, DAZN. You guys had new formats during COVID-19 as well with some professional players and so forth. Elaborate, please.
Yeah. So first thing we did was making sure our teams are safe and our people and everyone is safe. So that meant, I mean, we're a live platform, and the big credo is the stadium is our studio. So we really love to be in the stadium, be on grassroots, be, you know, transmit what's happening on the pitch. But when there's nothing happening on the pitch, we gotta do something. And we've been pulling on video on demand content a lot to kind of subsidize the live content. And to really be close to things, we were taking big matches from the past and asked players or whoever who were really close to this exact match. So Ilkay Gündogan, for example, was commenting with Alex Schlüter, one of our core moderators, the Dortmund-Monaco match, this massive Champions League match. They were kind of living through this again, but they did it from their home office, right? So because we asked them not to come here in the critical time, they were in their living room and suddenly talking about the furniture, etc., not about the match itself. So there was a big change happening, but yeah, so making sure people are all as safe as we possibly can. And then buying new content, creating new ideas. I really was impressed by the creativity of our team. One of our team members is living next door with Andi Bremer, the German national player that scored against Argentina in '90. You might remember that match. So he's his neighbor. So they created a little format, like my neighbor, the world champion, and was more or less done with a mobile phone and from balcony to balcony. So Andy was coming out every morning with a cup of coffee, and Sébastien was on his balcony, and they were having conversations about various things, little formats that we would have never thought of. So COVID in the end created a lot of creativity and pushed creativity out that wouldn't have been there apart from it. And the third thing we did was having very close touch with the rights holders. And of course, we were talking to our consumers. I tweeted very early in the thing that this is going to be an issue for us. Yeah, we didn't want to create the impression like this is not a problem for us. We'll just walk through this. So I was publicly stating that this is an issue for us and we're working on this intensely. And we've been in touch with our consumers very openly, and we've been communicating that the content on our platform has changed, and been very transparent with this.
Right. Well, sounds good. I mean, I wish you all continued success, you know, because we're all dealing with Corona, despite there are some sports that are back. Now, the first thing I'd like to touch on in the conversation is what are the specific differentiators of OTT versus live TV? And I'll let you begin this conversation, Thomas, because I know that there are some advantages, you know, that you would like to emphasize.
Yeah, look, the first question is, why is streaming going ahead? Why are we using Spotify? Why are you using Netflix? Why are we using DAZN? I think behind that is a huge mindset change. Before things were getting digital, and especially the iPhone brought this change, or smartphones brought this change, that you had to be in a certain place in front of a device to consume something. And that iPhone was just giving you liberty, freedom. You could consume more or less everything from anywhere. And this is the core thing that kind of streaming and for sports, DAZN really differentiates, which is you can be on an airport and you watch a tennis match, a football match, whatever, on your smartphone, but you can also have it on your living room device. You can always put it on the big screen. We have very short contractual phases. So you enter DAZN and you book it for a month or 2 or 3, and then you can decide to step out. You get a free trial. We keep the price at a low price, so make it available for everybody. These are the core things. You don't need an extra device, so you can have it on your PlayStation, you can have it on your Fire Stick, you can have it on your Apple TV. In Germany, we are now on Magenta TV, so Deutsche Telekom, and the set-top boxes, Vodafone, Giga TV. We're working with Audoux, so got a ton of partnerships where we can really make our app work on the specific devices, and therefore get a massive distribution. So you don't need to buy any kind of device. You will have a device where DAZN is working on really well, and you can use it wherever you like, and you make the choices, you make the calls as a consumer. The consumer is in control, and that is, I believe, totally the zeitgeist we're into.
All right, now Bhavesh, I'd like to see your approach to this in terms of the OTT versus live TV.
Look, I think it's more than the device, actually. I think the device is just one component. It's nice to have, that freedom of going into any one of the devices you own in the home or the ones that you take with you. But a lot of it is just changing behavior that really got accelerated over COVID-19, which is people want to watch whenever they want, and they want to binge watch as much of it as they want. And that makes the job even tougher of getting someone to come in for appointment TV. And with OTT, you have the ability to innovate that viewing experience. You have things that before were optional and nice to have as a differentiator, whether that's doing the multi-camera angles or instant highlights or stats overlays, to things that you really can't do in any other medium, like a watch party that so many platforms have introduced this last 4 weeks. It's something that a year ago we were apprehensive to doing a Zoom. We'd much rather go meet in person. But in a way that you can't do any of those things, you actually see OTT as a way to still get together with people and watch something that you can't do when you're doing it on TV. Sure, you can combine a Zoom and try to watch on your TV, but it doesn't give you the same experience of as you're experiencing it at the same time, as you're experiencing the same exact feature being replayed to you. This is something that you can experiment with on OTT that you haven't been able to before. There's also bringing that viewer the choice of being able to choose commentary that's something that leans towards your club and favors your club, and being able to have that feeling of the stadium, of having the supporters that are like-minded and supporting your team and feeling the ups and the downs, something you can't do on a neutral host feed that you have on TV. And so I think there are a lot of differentiators for it beyond the device. And I think we'll continue to see that experimentation that brings that viewing experience forward for the fan.
Yeah, now, please chime in if anyone. Oh no, sorry, Sébastien. So I'd like to pick your brain on the idea of the highlight package versus the live TV in terms of targeting audiences and using analytics. Do you feel that one is superior over the other in terms of growing an audience? Is that one way to capture? With the highlights, because the highlights obviously, for your non-super interested fan might appeal more.
Well, exactly. I mean, if you look at the data that NBC Sports, for example, released from the last Olympics in Rio, I mean, you saw the highlight, same thing with Eurosports. You saw the highlight. It's good to talk about other broadcasters as well, not just us. But so they saw the highlight package consumption go way up, while the live consumption went a bit down. And I think that's a trend that will continue. I mean, basically, live TV today is live sports. We know that. But at the same time, who can handle watching 10 hours a day of golf for 4 days in a row? You might do that for the Masters once a year. You might not do that every week, even though you're a golf fan. And I'm a super golf fan. And I won't do that. So here comes the highlight package where you can, let's say I'm a fan of this player. I can watch the exact highlight of that player very easily today, because the technology also allows, for example, the PGA Tour to produce highlight package for each player in the field, which is something that was triggered by the OTT consumption that didn't exist 5 years ago. And AI obviously helped a lot as well. So, highlight package are essential in keeping especially the younger generation involved in sports. It's a good first step towards getting people to subscribe to your live content. Same thing with the documentary as well. I think, if you're watching Netflix, Drive to Survive is the best advertising for Formula One that we could possibly find. And we happen to be the official broadcaster in France with Formula One. So it's another good trigger. So it's a very good way of getting consumption, getting advertising revenue as well, because you're putting that mostly on free platform, and getting a good first step towards getting the people to subscribe to your live premium package as well.
Right. Now, fan engagement obviously is what we all want, to increase the fan engagement. And you said something, in terms of different angles. I'd like you to elaborate more on your mode expert, in terms of how that is leading and increasing your fan base, to respective sports. Like what separates you in this from other broadcasters and other companies and so forth.
Well, I mean, we are very proud of the expert mode. Basically, the expert mode is an enhanced way of watching sports. And again, the expert mode does exist today because of OTT. We couldn't bring that type of experience online here before. So you can access basically everything that Bhavesh talked about. I mean, additional angle. I mean, for example, in golf, we only had one run with the Players' Championship this year, but we had like 36 additional feed where you could choose basically every group on the field you could choose from. So that's amazing. I mean, before you had one world feed, now you could choose between 36 different feed. So we are bringing that. We are obviously bringing a lot of live data. I mean, if you want to see who's playing, who has a red card, who has run the most kilometers during the game, and so on and so on. So a lot of basic stuff, but you were talking about fan engagement, and that's the thing we are looking the most at right now, is how do you bridge all those people watching together with what's being said on air. TV used to be very top to bottom. You have two talking heads telling the people what to think, what is going on the field, and so on. And people don't want that anymore. They want to be part of the actual broadcast. And you can do that with the help of OTT. And basically, we're going to be able to, very soon in our expert mode, allow people to have their say on, well, was this action worth a red card or not? Do you think it was worth a penalty kick? What do you think about this game? And so on and so on. And then use that on air during the post-game analysis, which is a complete turnaround from what was being done before. And the important thing with OTT and with the expert mode is that you have the possibility, and we are offering you the possibility to do that, but you can also do not activate the expert mode and just watch your game quietly and without doing anything. And I think that's important to allow the people the choice to do something during the game or to not do anything.
All right, now moving to you, Bhavesh. Fans are increasingly faced with a multitude of choices. Do you feel that your engagement in terms of getting the super fan, the nonchalant fan, and so on, what separates beIN's strategy, from your competitors or rivals or others?
Well, I think for us, it's the breadth of sports that we offer. We're able to speak to a large sports fan base, and across types of sports. We not only have lots of club football, but we have all the North American leagues. We have a lot of tennis, and we bring in the Indian Cricket League all into one market. And we have the Olympics, and the list goes on and on. We're able to speak to so many different audiences. We're able to super serve them and then bring them awareness of some of the bigger events that they're not necessarily used to seeing. And so those football fans are not just super served, lots of great football coverage, but they're seeing when we have Roland Garros on and the coverage that we're able to bring that attention for those great events to them. I think from an engagement standpoint, how we cover each of them is always going to be very different. Where we have the ability to go into instant goal replays, it's going to do really, really well in terms of engagement. You see tons of traction, lots of viewership, and lots of repeat viewership for that kind of content. But also allows us to go cover stories, and we go back and cover a team and what it took to get that team ready for a major event, and those documentaries that we put. And when we put those shows out, they build audience over time, but we're able to launch it and bring in a consistent audience, and it grows. When we also tried new platforms that we've never put any effort into, we're seeing instant audience tune in, instant audience lean in on platforms that I think have a latent audience for sport, but we hadn't participated in 2-3 years ago, and we just launched, and months later, we're reaching almost 1 million users. I think there's a lot of sport engagement opportunity as we continue to experiment, but I think the biggest thing is being able to have breadth and then bring that audience lots of variety.
Yeah, and DAZN, I mean, you guys have, you know, a lot to choose from as well. Do you find some sports in terms of fan engagement work better than others because maybe the athlete is more transparent? You know, I would just assume the idea of having NBA players and so forth talk about certain things gives this impression that you're giving the fan a locker room behind the scenes kind of coverage and perspective. Is this the direction DAZN will continue to go in?
Well, I think it all goes back to this mindset I talked about. We're offering choice, and we're not telling them what to do or what they have to consume. So even when you're watching big matches, be it on which sport, we don't start an hour or two before with a long discussion and whatever. We more or less start with the kickoff, but we offer featuring material, shoulder content as we call it, where we did some interviews before with some core players, for example, with Andre Marc-Andre ter Stegen when there's a Clásico happening. We'll be in Barcelona, we'll be seeing him and doing some interviews, and he's going to show maybe parts of his life, etc. So you get a different access, but you choose whether you want to see that or not. And the more of that we offer, the more experience we're getting about what people want to see and what's probably clicked or not. We get this feedback not by opinion, we get the feedback by data. Yeah. You put something on and it's clicked or it's not clicked. This is digital, zero or one. And from that, we're learning very fast about what people are interested in and what they want to do. Another channel we are using is the portals that we're having, Spox and Goal, where we're publishing other content. We're talking to the sports audience. So we use a whole ecosystem of things, the social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, where we're talking about this. Our portals, working closely with publishers like The Kicker in Germany. We have a podcast. So there's multiple options to be in touch with content in different ways. And this has different tiers and different stages. So this is well organized and well orchestrated by the team, making sure the one who wants to be in touch with the content will find it and will help you find it through the way we are kind of making this visible.
Now, are there any concerns? I'm sure you see a question, which I would like you to address shortly in your chat. But I'm just curious to know, is there a concern about the experience being too complex? You know, too confusing for users? I know that, you know, if you have options for them and so on, you know, but just, you know, basically, you know, could a novice come in and navigate through, or is there some sort of learning curve? Someone would have to understand how to optimize, you know, the different types of options you have available for fans. Sébastien, I'd like to start, you know, with you in expert mode specifically.
Yeah, well, I would say that if you have a good UX, it should be easy to use. I think that's the main goal. Keep it very easy to use. And sometimes you have very good surprise. For example, we used to have the ability to grade the game on our old app. And then when we switched to the new one for like a year or so, we didn't have the ability to do that in the new app. So we were doing that on social media, and we had like a few hundreds people giving a grade to the game. And when we switched back to the app, we had like tens of thousands of people being interactive with the app. So that shows you that, I mean, even though it's supposed to be a more narrow pool of people, you get actually a higher number of people being able to interact with the app. So I think that's key, keeping it simple, and then the amount of exclusivity you're going to bring to the app will, I would say, help the last ones to get involved with the app as well.
Okay, now Sébastien, you can look at the chat. There's a question directed to you. Would you like to answer that now, please?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so the question is, do you see viewers transitioning from linear TV consumption to OTT with my Canal? Well, the answer is very simple, is that we are progressively releasing MyCanal on the satellite box as well. So basically, in a year and a half from now, you will only get one experience, and that's the OTT experience, because now even the satellite box are plugged into the internet. So basically it's satellite, but it's OTT as well. And you will have the exact same feature. And basically that will be the end of the transition for us. And you will only have one experience, no matter what device you're choosing to consume from. And the OTT would have taken over, I would say.
Okay, now Bhavesh and Thomas, you see this other question. What about the latency in your OTT delivery for live events? Bhavesh, I'd like to start with you. Can you please address that question?
When you're at home, would you put up with latency, hearing your fellow neighbors start cheering or feeling the agony ahead of you? No, no one wants to suffer latency. I think the challenge is, how do you do this across a dozen different devices that all speak with different protocols and different technology limitations of the device manufacturers themselves? I think until a few weeks ago, Apple's HLS was one of the slowest and most latent delivery mechanisms for yet the most popular operating platform, bar none. And so I think you're going to see that compress. And I think a lot of the theoretical white paper approaches that we saw 2 years ago and a year ago are now in commercial trials. And maybe by the next Euro, or very likely by the 2022 World Cup, you'll see much faster and much more improvement on that. It might even get ahead of satellite DTH. But I think no one wants to willingly wait. That said, many of the time you don't actually know that you're behind anyone unless you happen to be watching the final of the World Cup or the final of the Champions League. These are big, big moments where the whole building might be watching and you'll hear it. But the average game, we all have our clubs and the clubs are playing and we're tuning into different things. And, you know, the average match day doesn't have that type of peak moment. And so it's around tentpole events, and I think it's magnified around those. And hopefully by then the industry will have more protocols and standards that allow us to all offer better and low latency services to everyone.
Okay, now sorry about that. That was a 2-year-old.
Loud.
All right, yeah, Thomas,
Sorry.
would you like to add anything to that? The first question in the chat.
No, I think, look, this has been brilliantly answered. There's nothing to add on it. I think it will, it's a problem that only appears on tentpole events, which are co-exclusive. Yeah, most of the sports events are exclusive, and then it doesn't happen. Yeah, you would never know this 30 seconds late because there's no comparison, there's no benchmark, and that is what's usually happening. So I'm assuming this will also disappear over time. Maybe there's will be some things, but it's only true for big tentpole events that the whole nation is watching that are co-exclusive, which are maybe just a very few.
All right, now this one, Sébastien, I just want to really quickly ask you, in terms of this, where fans can debate, you know, red cards and so forth. This would be on live television. Exactly.
Yeah, on every device we have. Yeah.
Is there, and there's not a concern about what could potentially happen from a fan on live on your platform on live television? There's no concerns about that?
No, but I mean, it's like a poll that we are releasing to the people so they can answer, well, I do agree with the red card or I do not agree. But that gives you the pulse of the people watching. So instead of having your talking heads telling the people what to think, well, there shouldn't be a red card, still you're going to have the people watching the game being able to have their say on what do they think should have happened, or if they think there should be a red card or a penalty kick or whatever.
So only in terms of polls and so forth, no actual integration of. Okay.
Well, I mean, that's probably the next stage of that. I mean, we saw that during, for example, the NBA bubble, where you had the people on Zoom being able to actually be featured in the actual stand on the field. So I mean, probably in a few years from now, you will see more and more of that type of content being pushed towards the regular broadcast, but step by step, I will say.
Okay, and I would just assume in terms of social media and so forth, you know, your target, is there a watchful eye on your demographics you know, or is there a goal to try to tap into some demographic that you're not tapped into, someone outside of your general sports age? And I would
Yeah,
just
for
put
sure.
this to all of you. Yes. So
Yeah, for
Sebastian,
sure. I
please.
mean, the average pay TV subscriber in sports is rather old. I mean, I guess I will not tell a big secret here. I mean, everybody knows that. Obviously, you have some sports that are younger in demographics than other, and then you have some sports that are very little. I mean, you have few people that are young, that are digital natives and so on. And that's the tricky part. I mean, how do you get those people to basically stop using their old satellite box? I mean, well, they can use that. They're going to have access, like I said, to the main feature, but maybe they're going to miss more and more what's new and what's all the new cool features that you're gonna release. So there's a lot of teaching involved in progressively bring those older generation to what we are offering, and also bringing new generation to consume live content instead of just watching free stuff on YouTube and other platforms, Facebook and Twitter and so on. I mean, the value of live sports, of premium sports, still very high for all of us, I guess, and you need to keep pushing that to the younger generation.
All right, now, Bhavesh,
Hey,
I like
just a follow up on what Sébastien said about the polling. I think it's a great idea. I think all of these things are here to stay, and the experimentation is only going to continue in terms of what to throw up that appears alongside a live match and after the match. It happens naturally when you're with people in person. It's only bound to come into the OTT experience even more pervasively. But just to give it a size and measure, we just ran a poll on the disqualification of a Saudi team, and we had 400,000 people participate in a Twitter poll about that disqualification and what they thought, and was that a fair disqualification or not. And that's just on a, just a regional poll. Imagine if you were to do this on a global event. I think there's tremendous amount of untapped opportunity in it. In terms of the viewership, I think there's lots and lots to be said about just shortening things for the sake of shortening them. But I think there's really more about how do you make it enriching and a fun experience. And I don't think we're talking about saying, let's turn 10-hour a day golf matches into 1 hour quick draw shoot-offs. But I do think we have to do something on the viewing experience so that if you were to sit through for whether it's an hour or 1 minute or a few hours, each of those versions would be really, really satisfying to you. And it's not just the purest of, well, this is how we produce it, this is how it's got to be, and you just have to suffer through it. We're challenged for time, and you're seeing people on the one hand binge and go really deep with a story arc that's really compelling and keeps you for 10 episodes or 20. And that's not going to be replaced by sport just saying, well, you might have activity once every 15 minutes or not at all. The formats are going to change. What you're seeing, though, is that it's popping up in places that you don't expect. You're seeing people watch things where you wouldn't expect it to watch them. You're seeing the music industry shift to streaming concerts on Roblox and streaming concerts on Fortnite. So you have massive changes in short amounts of time for parallel shifts in content, not competitive shifts in content viewing, but just parallel shifts, wholesale parallel shifts. So we have to be really mindful, and we have to look at what we would have seen as Twitch is really, really invasive and clutters the screen. For an older viewing audience, that's probably correct. But for a young viewing audience that's used to that, we really have to keep pushing and say, how do we make that even more interesting for the broader fan base?
Okay.
Something we did, maybe to add to this, we did when we started Bundesliga last year for the first match, we brought up a legendary commentary, Tono Taxis, who was one of the biggest commentators, but he's retired. He's been retired for a few years, but we brought him back. And so we had a second tile. We had two tiles on the same match. And Fritz von Tono Taxis, he was commenting. It was a big thing. It was like in the press for days. And I bet a lot of people that haven't heard his voice for ages were coming back to us and maybe signing up because they really liked it. And they were so successful that we repeated this with other legendary commentaries. We both just called them and brought them back from retirement for just 1 or 2 matches. But it was super successful, a very successful model. And that was, of course, more targeted to the people that are, let's say, 60 plus or 55 plus that grew up with these guys. But it was a super important and super successful, very simple thing to do. And that's what OTT can do, not linear. Linear, you've got one stream, one signal, and on OTT, you can have 3 or 4 if you want to. You can show the match multiple times, even without sound. I mean, sometimes people wish there's no commentary. You can even do it like totally if you want to.
Yeah, the Bundesliga wasn't as enjoyable without the commentary, without the, it really wasn't, the matches that ended last season, in my opinion. But let's focus on the conversation on the topic of money, monetization, obviously business. The goal is to generate revenue. And Bhavesh, I'd like to start with you. What is your, no PPV specific subscriptions planned? I mean, what is your goal, moving forward? What's proven to be the most successful? It's probably subscriptions, obviously, I would assume.
I mean, without question, the sports industry has seen enormous growth in its bottom line and player salaries and team revenues by having a really good unity with the pay model over the last two plus decades. And it's only going to continue with OTT in terms of bringing that revenue stream to more and more sport, more and more federations, more and more age brackets, to the point where you're seeing this now go into college sports and high school sports. That said, I think there's also an overabundance of choice, and you now have the opportunity to watch so many things for free that you're seeing AVOD start to take hold, and you're seeing an opportunity to go reach 20, 30 million people that don't want to pay for content. And whether that's Pluto TV or some of the others that are launching that are fully ad-based. And sport is showing up on those platforms too. We launched a channel earlier this year, beIN Sports Extra, and saw immediate growth in viewing, and far beyond, I think, what anyone would have expected for a platform where we just started, where people are coming in and watching for an hour and a half when we haven't been doing it. It's an immediate behavior, and they're ready and willing to watch it, and it continues to grow month after month. And we continue to add distribution partners for that channel. It's an interesting model. I don't see AVOD taking over the industry, but it is additive to the mix for sure. And meanwhile, pay-per-view is going to continue to have its place for events that aren't part of the regular viewing calendar, but do have a premium nature and should have a place as well in terms of how to monetize it better. And so we have all of those models across our OTT footprints, and I think you'll see more of that from the industry.
Yeah, Sébastien, what's your take on this idea? Do you feel that a combination of models would be the best, or just strictly subscription based? I guess that would be your bread and butter, subscription.
Well, yeah, I mean, subscription will still be our bread and butter for quite some time, I think. And even though we are also, monetizing through social media platform or other platforms other than MyCanal, because you have to do that. That's a small piece of the cake, but you're still happy to do that. But our main focus is subscription. By being both an editor of channel, we are buying sports rights, but we are also a huge aggregator of channel. I mean, if you subscribe to our sports package, you will have the ability to watch the Canal Plus Sports channel, but also the beIN Sports channel, which makes a very compelling offer. Next year, when we're gonna get back the Champions League, we're gonna be able to broadcast the two base game of the week with the two French team, and beIN will be able to broadcast every other game. And if you have just one or the other, you might miss something. If you have the sports package, you can see everything. And that's the key thing in our business model for the time being.
The time is running, as you can see in the chat. I'd like to touch on this idea. Formula One has an OTT platform. Is this a concern, a threat that leagues will develop their platforms and extract fans that might be tuned in to, to your networks and so on. Is that a concern to DAZN? I'd like to start. Well, if you'd like to touch on this, Sébastien, I know this is a direct issue for you as well, but I'd like to hear what all of you have to say on this matter.
No, go ahead.
Well,
Thomas.
these are existing, and yes, not just Formula One. There are quite a few in the world. The question is, I don't think. Well, let's put it the other way. Take the mindset question we had in the beginning, where people make choices, and is that something someone wants? Do you want to have 5, 6, 7 different subscriptions to watch the sports you like? And that would give you like a mono view on this. You wouldn't consume something and by that find out, oh, there's something else I missed out, and oh, I haven't seen these highlights, and oh, there's a documentary, oh, I didn't see this feature content, like this exploration. If I'd be on their side, I would absolutely consider it, and I would consider it in markets that I don't really reach. I maybe create your own stuff and where you don't sell the rights. But if you would put your own player in the market, you're kind of conquering with the system, and you can kind of you're running into the danger that you create a solo area where the consumption in the end will go down, because if you look at DAZN, I know our user numbers and know how we're growing, and every sport that's added gets a proportionate share of the total usership we're having. That's what you don't have anymore. The other thing is, if it's a really big right, you're starting to interfere the ecosystem, because the one that you might carve out might not be there in a few years when this has not worked out. So possibly you end up in a model where you have been kind of changing the ecosystem, but not to your favor on the long run. But
all right,
we'll see.
Yeah, I just want to I know we're nearly out of time, but I did want to talk about the evolution of the market, exclusivity. Is that still key? Is that the most important thing at this point? Bhavesh, how do you see that?
It's a great question. I think just to finish off on the F1, I think it was less about, the OTT challenge as much as, if you don't do a good job policing the piracy threat, it's tough to keep the rights there. And that goes into the exclusivity. If your content is not policed well and it's readily available on many OTT outlets, we, the three of us in the industry who look at buying rights, can't keep doing that continuously. You're starting to see the ramifications of it now with the current rights renewal window. COVID aside, I think it's only accelerated that effect. And you won't see continual increases every year, but you're actually seeing decreases start being registered in domestic rights renewals. Quietly in the Premier League, that was a dip. You're seeing that in the Bundesliga as well, and you'll continue to see it across the continent.
Okay, Sébastien and Thomas, any last words? Sébastien, no.
No, yeah, I mean, I was about to say I agree with Bhavesh, but I mean, we told before that we shouldn't say I agree, so I won't say that. But yeah, I mean, I see exclusivity being probably a bit I'm at a lower level in the future, I would say, because I see the need for some type of free-to-air in any cases, whether it's on YouTube or on a free-to-air linear channel. You need eyeball in front of your sports. I mean, that's key for your sponsors, for your audience, keep growing. And I think a good mix of pay TV, free-to-air, digital and OTT, I mean, is needed in most sports to be successful. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, all right. Well, I would like to thank my panelists again, Bhavesh from beIN Media Group, Thomas from DAZN, and Sébastien from Canal Plus, and the audience. For you all, I'm sure you'd be able to reach out to each of the panelists if we did not have time to address your question, and I urge you to do so because I'm sure they would be eager to answer any questions you might have. All right, and that does it for the panel of the challenges of delivering sports TV and directly to consumers. Okay, all right. It was a pleasure. Until next time.
Thank you, Chris.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.